Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the pre-diabetes tabling. So today, we're going to start this week off with reading food labels. And in addition, we're experimenting with like a shorter length. So rather than having it be like in the past where it was kind of like a half-hour kind of lecture, we're just going to give like a short, maybe 10-minute brief 10-minute presentation on different aspects. And so today we are going to do food labels, and let's get started. So before we get into how to read food labels and different parts of that, let's just reiterate kind of what prediabetes is. And so prediabetes is when your blood sugar levels are higher, but they're not high enough to be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. At this point, insulin resistance is starting to occur, and a lot of people actually don't experience any symptoms at all.
So how prevalent is prediabetes? So it's actually very prevalent. About 1/3 of the American population has prediabetes, the adult population. So about 8 in 10 people with prediabetes don't actually realize they have it. So it's not something that is obvious, and you have to go get your blood sugar checked in order to determine whether you have prediabetes or not.
And so let's get started with some basic information about food labels. So the food labels are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, which is part of the US government. And they give us like basic nutrition information for different packages of food. So you'll get, the amount of calories, the daily value of macro and micronutrients that you need in your diet. So things like fat, sugar, different vitamins and minerals. And then not technically part of the food labels, but it also lists the ingredients that are in like a package of food. And food labels, a lot of times, they're just going to be on like packages of food as opposed to, fresh produce or meat. A lot of that is optional. So you're going to mostly see it on, your packaged foods. And so here's what, basically what the food label looks like. So at the top, you have the servings per containers and the serving size. And then here you have your calories per serving. On the left side, you have the different macro and micronutrients. So things like, fat, cholesterol, protein, carbs. And as you can see, they're all broken out into the different kinds of fat and the different kinds of carbohydrates. So here you can see saturated and trans fats, and you can also see fiber and sugars. And then below that, you have kind of your more like vitamins and minerals. So here you have vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium. And then on the right side of all of these numbers, you have the percent values. So here, just, as an example for this particular label, 9 grams of fat is 12% of your daily value. And then similarly with vitamins, whatever the content might be. So in this case, the 320 milligrams equates to 25% of your daily value.
And just to add, you have to be careful because they don't always list the amount of calories per package. And sometimes like your bag of chips, well, they do. Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So we'll get into that a little bit later.
So when did Nico, do you know when this change went into effect?
This was recent. So I think in 2020 it was mandatory that all corporations now have to say, like, if a package of food contains the amount of, so like let's take Rainer's example of like a bag of chips. A lot of us would eat a bag of chips in one sitting, but on the back previously you would have like a bag of chips would be 2 or 3 servings. So now, as you can see from this label, they have oh geez, they have to include per serving as well as per container if it's something that you can easily consume in one sitting. So things like bags of chips, Like if you have like a bottled beverage, so like, one of those teas or like a bottle of Gatorade, they'll contain both per serving as well as the entire container. I can put the like the differences. And so also along with changing how many, including the entire nutrition content for, smaller packages of food. If you look back on the left, there's a lot of different changes that they've made. So for example, they've really emphasized the serving size, making sure that's bolded, as well as the amount of calories, making that bolded as well. They actually removed calories from fat because it's not so much, the amount of calories we're getting from fat, it's the kind of calories you're getting, or it's the kind of fats that you're consuming. So for example, as you can see here, they used to have, it doesn't show it on this old label, but you used to be able to see like monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. Those you don't necessarily need to include anymore, but because we need to watch, our saturated and our trans fats, those are included. As well as if you look down in carbohydrates, here they just say sugars, but if it has added sugars in the production process, now we include that. And so you can see they do include, companies are allowed, or not allowed, but they are required to show how much added sugar is in like a package of food. And then another kind of big difference that they make is the vitamins and minerals that we're watching for. And so as you can see here, we have vitamin A and C. Vitamin A and C deficiencies are pretty uncommon now in the US. And so we're not required to, like, really, the companies aren't really required to like pay, like label how much vitamin A or how much vitamin C you're getting, as opposed to vitamin D, where vitamin D deficiency is actually really common. And so, that's one of the vitamins that are required to be included in the food label. And then same with calcium, iron, and potassium, because those are very important nutrients. We want to know how much that we're getting in. And then they did kind of emphasize potassium compared to the new label now. And sometimes you might be able to find, vitamin A and vitamin C on newer labels, but that's just because, that you can provide that information optionally.
So it's also important to read your ingredient list when you're out shopping, as well as the nutrition facts. Often, for example, peanut butter, when I'm looking at a jar of, I prefer natural peanut butter, which kind of has no added sugar, but sometimes they'll sneak it in there on you. So it's important when I go to the store and I'm buying peanut butter to check the label and the ingredient list, because it's usually right on there. If it has sugar in it, it will be the third or so ingredient. And so the largest component of the food is the first ingredient, and then they go down by quantity as you go down the list. So the one we have here is peanuts, which is the most common ingredient, and then it's corn syrup solids. Corn syrup is basically sugar, and it contains sugar as well. Pea protein, 2% or less of. So the whole ingredient list, there's 2% or less of all these, the salt, hydrogenated vegetable oil, monodiglycerides, molasses, orthophosphate, which I think is a preservative. And so compare this one up here, you see all these additives and stabilizers that kind of extend the shelf life. Versus this is, I'm assuming this is a natural peanut butter, right, Nico? The natural peanut butter, which contains way less. It just has peanut, sugar, palm oil, or 2% less of salt and molasses. And so usually this one would last, I'm guessing, would last less time on the shelf compared to this looks like a Jif brand. And so you don't want to be putting all of those preservatives in your body. They're not very good, and they're really hard on oxidative stress on your body. And so just when you're out shopping, making sure you're checking the ingredient list, and you generally want to eat something that has a small ingredient list, not something like the top here. And so also like with peanut butter, the label may seem healthy, but make sure you check the back if they're having added sugar, and also checking the nutrition label for added sugar. So sometimes they'll sneak it in and make it seem like it's healthy, but it actually has a lot of added sugar in there or a lot of added fat. And just making sure you're going through that list. And usually the shorter, the better.
And then one thing I do want to add is here you can see hydrogenated vegetable oils. And so hydrogenated vegetable oils are actually like a form of trans fats. And if you look here, you can see that says 0 grams of trans fat. And so it's kind of odd, but companies are able to say a food is trans fat free if it's less than half a gram. So even though it says 0 grams of trans fat, it still actually contains trans fats, because you see hydrogenated vegetable oils. Sometimes you might have something such as fully or partially in front of it. Those are all different kinds of trans fats. And of course, trans fats are unsafe. They're not good for us, and we need to consume them as little as possible. And they're pretty present in a lot of processed foods, mostly to keep them shelf stable. So, things like peanut butter, but also in like a lot of snack cakes, or, like foods at the store, like baked foods at the store, things like that.
So that's our mini presentation today on nutrition labels. Leave us a comment and let us know if you like the shorter duration better. We kind of wanted to make them easier for everybody, so you can just kind of learn little snippets and not have to take so much time out of your day to learn about preventing prediabetes. And we'll be doing this every day, doing a little snippet. So stay tuned. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email our team at hpdp@gliich.net. And thank you for tuning in.